Choose your husband, but not your in-laws.
My son should not have married you.
A math professor wants to multiply her assets.
Just sign it.
Well, what kind of person manipulates their mother?
A new bride doesn't want to hang with his family.
He's my husband.
She needed to be the only thing in his life.
And a meek, mousy mom learns to roar.
She had cornered her prey.
These deadly women love their husbands, but
Cheers.
53-year-old Katie is the matriarch of the Passanidi family. She recently adopted a young girl,
Hey, sweetie, your tea's ready.
has a biological daughter in college,
Cheers. Cheers.
and a loving husband, Tony. They are a high-achieving couple living in San Antonio, Texas.
She's settling in well.
Yeah. She's happy here.
Katie had a very impressive academic pedigree. She was very intelligent. She worked as a professor in various colleges with her degrees in mathematics.
You know, you're going to be late for your lecture.
Oh, God. I hate leaving her. I want to quit. What?
Nothing. It's your call.
But her timing couldn't be worse. It's 2008,
Bye, girls. Bye.
and the financial world is collapsing.
Katie had quit her job because she was raising an adopted daughter. Her husband, Tony, had lost his job. So they were in dire financial straits.
Any jobs there for you?
Nothing.
For this mathematician, nothing is adding up.
They were living paycheck to paycheck, and there was nothing there. And they even owed back taxes.
I need money now.
But someone else is about to enter Katie's equation.
Mom's got some money.
Katie's mother and stepfather live on a farm in Keithville, Louisiana. She thinks Mom owes her big time.
Katie's mother, Loretta, was only 16 when she had her, so she gave Katie to her mother to raise.
Oh, she's beautiful. She felt very badly about that. And Katie knew how to pluck those strings. She's lovely.
These days, her mother, Loretta, is an easy target.
Who is she?
My daughter. How could you forget?
I'm forgetting a lot these days.
She's suffering from dementia.
She couldn't function in everyday life.
But luckily, Loretta has a doting husband, Ernest Luttrell.
How's my gal?
Ernest loved Loretta. They were together more than 50 years, but he had no use.
Katie's feud with her stepfather escalates. When Ernest is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and hospitalized, she sees an opportunity.
Oh, gosh, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
What's your favorite?
What's that? Why, thank you.
Loretta and Ernest were in their 70s, but when you add in the fact that they'd both been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you have a recipe for problems.
But when am I going to get out of here?
I'll ask the doctor. It's tragic, but I think you should be committed.
Katie's determined to keep her stepfather out of the way.
Really? The doctor thinks he's doing fine. He should go home in a few days.
Where?
She has her mother give her power of attorney over him.
I think you should stay.
Katie tried everything she could to get him committed permanently to an Alzheimer's unit.
I'll talk to his doctors.
Well, what kind of person manipulates their mother?
Convincing her demented mother to sign over his affairs. Next, Katie goes for Ernest's money.
We just need you to sign here, here, and here. While you're doing that, I'll just photocopy the power of attorney.
But why am I here?
I just need you to sign it.
We can only wonder how much Loretta really knew what was going on in her state.
But what is this?
Mom, just sign it.
And she put all of that money into an account in Loretta's name.
Is everything okay?
Oh, yes. Just sad, that's all. That's why I need to take control.
But Katie's plot to keep Ernest in the hospital fails. Doctors send him home. To help the couple cope, they hire a live-in housekeeper.
While Katie's here, I thought I might go get some groceries.
Make us some coffee first.
Please.
44-year-old Tina Van Mercue will soon be drawn into Katie's web.
The cast of killers in this tale is a housekeeper, a woman with advanced dementia, and a PhD, Ernest and Loretto.
Tina, come here.
She was hardly the perfect French maid. In fact, quite the opposite.
She was rather unkempt and uneducated.
And tell her.
You gotta find a hitman, or I'll throw you out.
Katie Passaniti used her elderly, demented mother to organize a hit.
You hear that, Tina? Or she'll throw you out.
You'll be homeless.
Now, for a person like Tina Van Mercue, who had a criminal record, that was a big deal.
I'll try my best.
You better.
Katie wants her stepfather dead before he finds out what she's been up to. Tina runs in bad circles.
How'd you like to make some money?
How much money?
Eric Crane was a drug user. He wasn't employed. Really, I would call him a sociopath.
What do I gotta do?
You gotta kill my boss.
Yeah, okay.
To be willing to do this to a poor old guy who never did anything to him, who was already suffering with Alzheimer's. My heavens, he might have been dumb, but he was a vicious piece of work.
Mastermind Katie is hundreds of miles away at her home in Texas.
She's out of town, conveniently, with her clean hands.
And her mother, Loretta, is at church, conveniently early. Ernest thinks he's home alone.
What are you doing on my property?
It all happened pretty quickly.
Whoa!
Eric Crane shot, and then he continued shooting. And when I say he blew half his head off, I really mean Eric Crane blew his head off.
Eric's told to make it look like a robbery. He steals Ernest's guns and his truck. But that soon backfires.
People saw him driving Ernie's truck around town with the guns in the front seat. It's sort of like he signed the crime.
Is a walking, talking, dumb criminal joke.
Turn to the left.
Soon, Tina's in jail.
Now, turn to the right.
So Tina was arrested, and she said, "No, that's not my gun. Loretta gave me that gun." So Loretta was arrested.
Turn to the left.
A very confused grandmother who doesn't know where she is or why. The only person not in jail is the mastermind herself.
This is a woman who manipulated her mother and participating in one of the worst crimes that are imaginable.
Katie lets everyone take the fall, including her own mother. Loretta is indicted for first-degree murder, but is deemed unfit for trial. Tina Van Morcue pleads guilty to second-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. Eric Crane pleads guilty to first-degree murder and receives life without parole.
This one with the blue bow.
Katie thinks she's got away with murder. But there's one little slip. When she forges the victim's will to score her biggest payday.
She had a will made out after his death, giving herself everything that Ernest had. And once we realized, in fact, it was a forgery and Ernest never signed it, she became number one suspect.
Katie Passaniti?
Yeah?
You have a warrant for your arrest.
One of the remarkable things about this story is that Katie, for such a smart woman, at least academically, was completely stupid.
In 2013, Katie is found guilty of second-degree murder, conspiracy, and forgery. She's sentenced to life, plus 70 years. No chance of parole.
She doesn't need to be out walking among us.
Katie wasn't just willing to murder her stepfather, but also let her mother take the fall.
She was a malicious and ugly woman. She'll never see the light of day again.
Beauty can be the perfect mask.
It was just plain old greed and anger.
To hide a selfish heart.
He never should have opened that door.
And feed an evil soul.
She killed everybody she caught.
But there is another woman in his life. Local beauty, Opal.
I hope you don't mind that I've come here today.
No, not at all.
I thought maybe we could go to the movies.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Opal Collins is a very attractive woman. She's in her mid-20s. People described her as having the face of an angel.
Hi. Hi. Opal, I've heard about you.
Opal's gonna take me to the movies.
Cheers.
Opal becomes a permanent fixture in the household, visiting regularly. A bit too regularly for his mother.
I don't trust her.
But they seem so happy.
The Collins family did not approve of Opal at all. They didn't think she was a good match for Ben Jr.
Mom, it's Ben.
Opal is just too fast and sassy. And around her, accidents happen.
I think you should go.
Certainly not.
I mean it. Now.
I'm okay, boy? I'm okay.
But Ben is having none of it. He can't believe his luck.
For Ben, I think it was even more important that he have this really good-looking woman at his side, because in some ways the accident may have made him feel like he might have been less of a man.
Ben insists Opal can visit anytime she wants.
See? I could look after you real well.
Want some help?
No, thank you.
I was asking Ben.
It's all right, Mom.
Opal was as jealous of his own family as she would have been another woman in Ben's life.
But there is something about Opal.
How much is that insurance settlement worth?
$10,000.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
In current dollars, that would be something closer to $86,000. That's a lot of incentive for Opal to stick with him.
I just want to look after my mom. She's done a lot for me.
In Ben, Opal saw a victim, someone she could easily dominate and control.
Sorry, babe.
1956, Kentucky. Opal Collins outstays her welcome. Her fast ways have turned her boyfriend's family against her, and they move away to another state.
I think the biggest part of it was just to get as much physical distance as possible between themselves and Opal.
Ben had enough money to build a large 5-bedroom house where he lived with his family. He needed their assistance, and they all got along very well.
Oh. Who's that?
Imagine their surprise when Opal knocked on the door.
Ben? Where are you?
I'm here. Wow, Opal?
I've missed you so much. I couldn't stay away.
Opal's not giving up.
I've missed you too.
And then I'm sure Opal batted those beautiful blue eyes of hers, said she was sorry, and it would never happen again. And he wanted to believe her.
Hostilities can't be resolved by moving if all of the hostile parties end up relocating in the same place.
Within a month, the couple is married. And Opal moves in with her in-laws.
Well, as soon as Opal arrived at the house, the feuds began.
He's my husband, all right? You wrinkly old woman, he married me. I'm the one that gets to make the decisions in this house, not you.
Julia absolutely despised her, wanted nothing to do with her.
I used your marriage certificate as toilet paper. That's how little I think of your marriage.
Opal fights back.
I want her and him and your two disgusting sisters out of this house.
As soon as she became Queen Bee, she insisted that Ben's family leave.
They were at each other. It was like two cats in a bag.
The family hits a breaking point.
Get along now.
It was just awful tension in the household every day from sunrise to sundown.
For God's sake!
God!
Ben's thinking, how the hell do I get out of this wheelchair and run?
If you don't get out, we're gonna carry you out!
That'll never, ever happen.
Opal was familiar with guns. She took his .22 rifle. She put 16 rounds into it.
This is now a way of resolving the power relationship, which is known as wife wins.
She goes into the living room blazing. She kills her youngest sister-in-law, Mary Sue. She's 11 years old. Then she chases her other sister-in-law, Martha Ann. All the while, Ben is lying helpless in his bed. He hears the horror of his family being slaughtered.
Ben had to listen to his whole family being massacred. Then her footsteps coming up the stairs for him.
Opal, what have you done? Stop!
If I can't have you, no one can.
Please don't!
The only survivor is Ben's father, who's out for the day. Opal doesn't make a run for it. She turns herself in.
Hi, Opal.
Can you call the police? I shot him all.
Psychopaths don't feel guilt for what they did, remorse for what they did, or empathy for their victims. People that are not capable of empathy are also not capable of love.
I'm the one that did it. Shot the whole damn family.
Why would you do that?
Gave me a rough time.
Opal Collins hands out 4 life sentences, but only stands trial for the murder of 11-year-old Mary Sue. In 1956, she is convicted and sentenced to death. But she gets a break. The governor commutes her sentence to life behind bars.
This was during a period of time when 35 of the 48 American states had death penalties, and almost none of those executions were of women.
Opal destroyed lives simply because she couldn't get what she wanted.
I think what makes Opal Collins one of the nastiest women I've ever encountered is just her absolutely naked greed and the length she's willing to go.
Get more Deadly Women online. Follow us on Facebook.com/deadlywomen.
What are you cooking?
Some women can bear a lot.
You can't do anything right.
But this was ridiculous.
Sorry, I don't want to fight.
They take whatever's dealt.
There was constant bickering and quarreling.
Until they reach their breaking point.
She couldn't control it anymore.
It's a portrait of happiness for the Kaur family in India. 28-year-old Rajvinder loves her role as wife and mother.
Rajvinder was a good wife and mother.
I got it.
In 2004, her husband Iqbal has life-changing news.
Oh my God!
A work visa in the United Kingdom
So good for us.
is what Iqbal and his extended family have been waiting for.
You'll do well soon in England.
His widowed mother, Bajit, is over the moon.
I'll be able to support you, Mom.
But his wife is not. Rajinder will be left to look after her mother-in-law.
From the word go, it was clear there were huge tensions between Rajvinder and her mother-in-law, Bajit.
Rajvinder will be able to look after you. Like a parent's did.
Don't talk about our family like that.
Show some respect.
Rajvinder's family didn't pay a dowry, which is the norm when it comes to arranged marriages.
In cultures where a dowry is agreed to, money to be given to the husband for marrying a young woman, if that money doesn't show up, it's gonna cause problems.
Rajvinder has an ally in her sister, who is married to Iqbal's brother.
Rajvinder's sister would stand up to her mother-in-law, but Rajvinder just remained quiet and stoic.
So in 2004, Iqbal moved to the UK. He was a builder by trade and started working in Southampton.
Rajvinder, get the food ready.
Rajvinder becomes her mother-in-law's slave.
Daughter of a dirty parent.
Not unusual for a little bit of tension between wives and mothers-in-law, but this was ridiculous. Baljit was horrible.
She was constantly questioning why her sons even married these two sisters.
But the things she says. She's a mean old woman.
In fact, Rajvinder moved out of the home where she was looking after her mother-in-law back to her parents.
I want you to ring Iqbal and tell him.
You useless woman? Do you think my son will be on your side?
Things were terrible.
Rajvinder's only hope is to join her husband in England. And after 4 years under her mother-in-law's heel, it finally happens.
Welcome to your new home.
When Rajvinder left India to be with her husband, she left a lot more than her country.
What do you think?
Also, I'll make it a perfect home.
She's coming over.
Bajit was very lonely in India, and her son Iqbal was so worried about her that he encouraged her to come over in August 2010 and stay.
For how long?
6 months.
No. No, please.
It's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be forever.
This will not be a happy holiday.
And one that the family will never forget.
In 2010, Rajvinder Kaur has a new life in the United Kingdom.
They're here!
with her husband Iqbal and their 2 children.
Hello, grandson.
But now her mother-in-law, Baljit,
You've grown so tall.
has come to visit.
See what grandma brought for you. Iqbal, this is for you.
Rajvinder and her mother-in-law already had a bad track record when Mom shows up at the door for 6 months.
Come, Mom. You must be very tired. I'll take you upstairs and show you your room.
The tension between Rajvinder and Baljit was immediate.
Rajvinder is now back under the heel of her mother-in-law.
What are you cooking? It stinks.
Constantly berating her, constantly picking holes in everything she did. Objecting to her cooking, accusing her of not cleaning the apartment properly.
What are you doing? Don't fold the clothes that way.
It must have created a very bad atmosphere.
What a useless mother. Get out.
I love my children. They are my world.
Don't talk to me like that. Get out.
Rajvinder was very stoic. She was the kind of woman who...
To be stuck in a flat with your mother-in-law.
With Baljit's 6-month visit almost over,
I can't wait to go to see my family and friends.
Have a good day.
Rajvinder should be relieved her nemesis is going home.
I may be going, but I will come back.
But it might not be forever.
Just 2 days before Baljit was due to go back to India, the tempers had reached boiling point, and Rajvinder had had enough.
On February 25th, 2011, Rajvinder snaps.
She'd taken a rolling pin from the kitchen, taking it through to the bathroom where Baljit was showering. And it's there she launched her brutal attack on her mother-in-law.
Rajvinder exploded on her mother-in-law. It was the physical manifestation of not being able to take it any longer.
Hitting her 20 times. She was really angry.
This is a classic example of overkill. After that frenzied attack, Baljit could not have lived.
Hello?
Iqbal,
Is everything okay?
something has happened to your mother.
Rajvinder called Iqbal at work and told him that his mother had been involved in a dreadful accident.
That Baljit had slipped in the bath when she was putting oil on.
No, we won't need an ambulance.
Her husband calls the paramedics and races home.
What have you done?
The paramedics arrived expecting to see an elderly woman who had fallen in the shower. Instead, they encountered what could only be interpreted as a crime scene.
The paramedic said afterwards it was one of the worst head traumas he'd ever seen in his entire career.
No one is buying Rajvinder's story, but she's sticking to it.
During 14 subsequent police interviews, Rajvinder insisted that her mother-in-law had died from an accident.
But forensic evidence clearly shows the real story.
Rajvinder left a body of evidence. It was very clear that one fall in the shower wouldn't have caved in her skull.
In 2012, Rajvinder Kaur is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 11 years.
Rajvinder eventually did admit she killed her mother-in-law, but insisted that she had motivation for doing so because of this build-up of tension between them.
Rajvinder is torn between her love for her husband and the judgment of her mother-in-law.
Coming from a dirty family.
She could see no way out but to eliminate one of them.
Everybody has a breaking point. They can only be pushed so far. Rajvinder had hers, and now she's in prison.
These deadly women found their prey through their wedding vows. Katie Passanidi couldn't wait for her inheritance.
The call comes in just before dawn, the kind of hour when New York is half asleep and half lying to itself, when sirens feel louder and the streets feel narrower, when shadows cling to brick walls like secrets that don't want to be told. And somewhere in a fourth-floor walk-up in Queens, a door is standing open, unlocked, breathing cold air into a room that should have been warm, because the woman who lived there never slept with her door open, never forgot her keys, never missed work without calling, never vanished without leaving a trace. And yet this morning her bed is made, her phone is dead, her purse is on the kitchen table, and the city is about to inherit another name it will never quite forget. New York, 2005. A city already hardened by loss, already trained to move on quickly. But this disappearance cuts differently. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the way nothing looks disturbed. No broken glass. No overturned furniture. No blood. Just absence. Detectives step carefully, gloved hands hovering over ordinary objects that suddenly feel loaded with meaning. A coffee mug with a lipstick mark, still faintly scented with yesterday. A half-written grocery list stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like the Statue of Liberty. A jacket draped over a chair, pockets empty. The kind of scene that whispers instead of screams, and whispers are harder to hear. Her name spreads fast through the building, then the block, then the borough. Neighbors replay their last sightings with forensic precision. Someone heard footsteps on the stairs late at night. Someone else thought they saw her talking to a man near the subway entrance. Another swears they noticed nothing at all. And the guilt in that admission sits heavy. The super says the locks are old but reliable. The landlord says there were no complaints, no threats, no trouble. At work, a desk remains untouched, a chair pushed in neatly, a calendar circled 3 weeks in advance for a meeting she never misses. Missing person flyers bloom on lampposts and bus stops, her face replicated in black and white, eyes frozen in a moment before everything stopped. The first 48 hours are frantic. Patrols canvass the neighborhood. Detectives knock on doors, lean into bars, scan security footage grainy enough to lie by omission. The subway system coughs up thousands of faces and not a single answer. Credit cards remain silent. Bank accounts untouched. Her phone pings once, then never again. The city hums around the investigation, indifferent and relentless, traffic flowing, headlines changing, but inside the precinct the case file begins to swell, page by page, possibility by possibility, each one collapsing under scrutiny. They reconstruct her last known movements with the care of people afraid to break something fragile. She leaves work at her usual time. She buys groceries. She swipes into her building. After that, the timeline fractures. No confirmed sightings. No calls. No messages. The building's front camera glitches at the worst possible moment, skipping minutes like a stutter in the city's memory. A neighbor reports a strange smell in the hallway days later, but it leads nowhere. Dogs are brought in. They circle, hesitate, lose the trail at the curb, where New York swallows everything equally. Rumors fill the gaps where facts should be. An ex-boyfriend with a temper. A coworker who asked too many questions. A stranger seen lingering too long near the entrance. Each lead flares briefly, then burns out. Alibis stack up. Stories hold. Fingerprints don't match. DNA offers nothing but the reassurance that she once lived here. Press conferences are held under harsh lights, officials choosing their words carefully, asking the public for help while trying not to admit how little they have. The phrase "no signs of foul play" hangs in the air like a challenge. Weeks pass, then months. The search radius expands. then dissolves into a haze of tips from across the city and beyond. Sightings reported in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in New Jersey. A woman who looks like her buying coffee. A woman who sounds like her asking for directions. Each tip arrives with hope attached, and each one leaves behind a smaller, sharper disappointment. Detectives learn the rhythms of her life better than their own. Memorizing habits, favorite routes, quirks, trying to think like someone who didn't plan to disappear. The media's attention sharpens, then drifts. New cases crowd the airwaves. But this one lingers, a low-grade unease that refuses to resolve. It's the lack of violence that unnerves people. No body. No crime scene. No clear villain. Just a woman erased between one ordinary night and the next ordinary morning. In a city obsessed with spectacle, this quiet vanishing feels obscene. Investigators start to notice the small inconsistencies that only appear after time has stretched thin. A witness changes their story slightly. A timestamp doesn't quite line up. A name appears in the file more than once, attached to different contexts. None of it is enough. Everything is plausible. Everything is deniable. The case slows, not because anyone gives up, but because there is nowhere left to run at full speed. Years accumulate like dust. Detectives retire. New ones inherit the boxes, the binders, the hard drives labeled with dates that now feel ancient. Technology improves. Databases grow. Faces age. Her photo on the missing poster becomes a snapshot of a past version of the city itself, pre-social media, pre-everything being tracked, when it was still possible, somehow, to step sideways and vanish. The community doesn't forget. Anniversaries bring candles and quiet gatherings. Friends mark time by the absence, by birthdays uncelebrated, by a room left untouched. Every so often, a cold case unit pulls the file back into the light, rereads every report, re-interviews every witness, hoping that distance has loosened a tongue or sharpened a memory. They talk about motive without knowing the crime. They talk about opportunity without knowing the moment. They talk about suspects without knowing if there was ever an act to suspect. Somewhere in the city, life continues at full volume. Trains roar through tunnels. New buildings rise. Old ones are gutted and reborn. The street outside her apartment looks different now, but the floor plan inside is the same, preserved in photographs and diagrams. A map to a place where something crucial failed to happen, or happened too cleanly to leave a mark. Cold case. The words arrive quietly, almost politely, stamped onto the folder when urgency has been exhausted. They don't mean the investigation is over. They mean it has changed shape. It waits. It listens. It trusts that time, which buried the truth, might also uncover it. Detectives learn to live with the unanswered questions, but they never quite make peace with them. Every so often, a new angle suggests itself, a new database is checked, a new comparison run. Most come back empty. A few come back strange. In 2005, no one imagines how far this disappearance will reach. How many lives it will brush against without revealing itself. How many times the truth will almost surface and then slip away again. For now, there is only the image of an open door in a quiet building. A city waking up around a mystery it doesn't yet understand. And a name added to a list that grows longer every year. A list of people who stepped out of their lives and into a silence so complete it feels deliberate. The file closes for the night, but the case does not sleep. It lingers in the margins, in the questions no one knows how to ask yet, in the unsettling possibility that the answer has been nearby all along, blending in, waiting, while New York moves past, unaware that one of its most ordinary nights has already become something else entirely. Time doesn't pass cleanly after a disappearance like this. It pools. It thickens. It turns every unanswered question into something heavier than the one before. By the second year, the case is no longer measured in hours or days but in seasons, in winters that erase footprints and summers that bring them back, in the slow realization that whatever happened that night was efficient enough to survive scrutiny and quiet enough to survive memory. The apartment is released back to the landlord. New tenants move in, unaware of the geometry of loss that once defined those rooms. Fresh paint covers the walls. The door is replaced, but the address stays the same, and for investigators, that's enough to keep the past anchored. They start again from the beginning because cold cases don't advance forward, they spiral inward. The victim's life is reconstructed with obsessive care. Friends are asked the same questions years apart, and their answers shift, not because they are lying, but because memory is a living thing. Someone now recalls a fight that once seemed trivial. Someone else remembers a strange phone call. The tone wrong, the timing off. A coworker admits there was tension at the office, a disagreement over money, over credit, over something that felt important at the time and embarrassing in retrospect. None of it explains a clean disappearance, but all of it adds texture, friction, places where something could have caught. The ex-boyfriend resurfaces again. He always does. His name sits in the file like a bookmark. In 2005 he was cleared quickly. Alibi solid. No physical evidence. But years later his life looks different. A new job. A new city. A history of short relationships and sudden moves. Detectives interview him again, watching for microreactions, for anger that comes too fast or indifference that comes too easily. He answers patiently. He seems tired of the questions. He knows the script. Nothing sticks. Attention shifts to the building itself. Old buildings remember things. Maintenance logs are pulled. Renovation records examined. A plumber who worked there years later mentions a sealed-off access panel that shouldn't have been sealed. It leads to nothing, but it reminds everyone that structures have blind spots, places where sound doesn't travel, where time can be interrupted. Dogs are brought back, newer, better trained. They catch a scent this time, faint but persistent, leading not to the curb but down the block, toward the subway, toward the veins of the city that make disappearance plausible. Surveillance technology has improved, but it can't reach backward in time. Still, old footage is enhanced, reprocessed, slowed down until every pixel is interrogated. A figure appears in the frame near the entrance, face obscured, posture unreadable. It could be anyone. It could be no one. Experts argue over gait analysis, over shoulder width, over the way the person turns their head as if listening. It becomes a Rorschach test for the case. Everyone seeing what they're afraid of. The community changes. People who once lived on that block move away. New residents don't know the story until someone tells it late at night, lowering their voice as if the walls might hear. Candlelight vigils grow smaller, but more intense. The victim's family ages in public, their faces carrying the weight of years spent in limbo. They speak carefully now, seasoned by disappointment, but the hope never fully disappears. It just learns how to hide. A tip arrives from out of state. A woman matching the description was seen using a different name, working at a diner, telling a story that almost fits. Detectives follow it for weeks. They find the woman. She is not the one. Apologies are made. Files are updated. The case absorbs another almost. What keeps the investigation alive isn't evidence, but discomfort. There is something about the scene that never resolves, something too intentional about the lack of chaos. No struggle. No forced entry. No desperate call. It suggests trust or surprise or planning. It suggests that the moment of transition from ordinary life to disappearance was brief and decisive. Investigators debate whether the crime even happened inside the apartment. The open door could be misdirection. The scene could be theater. Financial records are re-examined. A small withdrawal weeks before she vanished catches attention. It was insignificant at the time. Now it's a signal. Who was she meeting? What was she preparing for? Emails from an old account are recovered, fragments of conversations that stop abruptly. One message mentions starting over, but context is missing. Was it metaphorical? Was it a joke? Or was it a rehearsal? Years turn the case into a mirror. Everyone who looks into it sees something personal reflected back. Fear of being erased. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear that truth is optional if you're careful enough. Younger detectives assigned to the cold case unit treat it with reverence, like a legend they've inherited. Veterans treat it like an old wound that never healed correctly. Then, quietly, a name surfaces that wasn't there before. Or maybe it was buried deep, misspelled, misfiled, waiting for someone with enough distance to see it clearly. A man who lived nearby in 2005. No criminal record at the time. A job that required odd hours. A habit of reinvention. He moved shortly after the disappearance. Then again. And again. Each move clean, documented, legal. New addresses. New employers. New versions of himself. Nothing illegal about starting over. Nothing suspicious on paper. Detectives start mapping his life backward and forward, drawing lines between cities, between names that are similar but not identical. He's careful, but not perfect. A signature here. A reference there. A pattern emerges, not of violence but of erasure. People who know him describe him as polite, forgettable, the kind of person you don't look at twice. The kind of person who could stand next to you on a subway platform and vanish into the crowd without leaving an impression. They find him eventually, living quietly under a different name, in a place where no one asks questions. He's older now, softer around the edges. When detectives sit across from him, he doesn't flinch. He smiles. He says he's been waiting for this conversation, though he can't explain why. He answers questions with precision, offering details unprompted, as if eager to demonstrate cooperation. His story is consistent. Too consistent. He remembers dates and times with a clarity that feels rehearsed. But evidence is stubborn. There is still no body, no definitive crime scene, no physical link strong enough to survive a courtroom. Circumstantial threads tighten, then loosen. Prosecutors hesitate. They always do when certainty is this fragile. The man continues his life, watched but untouched, a ghost in plain sight. The case is no longer just about one disappearance. It's about identity. About how easily a person can become someone else if no one is looking closely enough. It's about a city that teaches you how to disappear by accident, and a system that struggles when disappearance is intentional. Late at night, detectives replay interviews, listening not to what is said but to what isn't. Pauses. Breaths. The choice of words. They wonder if the truth is hidden in plain language. If the answer has already been spoken and simply not recognized. The cold case file grows heavier, thicker, more alive with possibilities that refuse to settle. Somewhere between the past and the present, the woman at the center of it all remains fixed in time, neither found nor fully lost. Her absence shapes decisions she'll never know about, conversations she'll never hear. And as the investigation edges closer to something like resolution without ever quite touching it, the question lingers, sharper now than it was in 2005. Did she choose to disappear, or did someone help her do it so well that even the truth doesn't recognize itself anymore? By the time a case reaches this age, it stops belonging to any single detective. It becomes institutional memory, a quiet pressure that never fully leaves the building. The file is passed hand to hand, desk to desk, each transfer adding fingerprints without adding answers. And yet, something subtle shifts when the man with the many names enters the orbit of the investigation. The air changes. Conversations lower. The questions sharpen. Not because he fits cleanly, but because he fits too well into the empty spaces. They start pulling everything connected to him, not just police records but fragments of ordinary life. Rental applications. Employment forms. Utility bills. Each document is legitimate. Each one tells a slightly different version of the same story. The names change. The handwriting doesn't. The pattern isn't criminal in itself. It's evasive. Like someone practicing disappearance in small, legal increments, learning how to step sideways without tripping alarms. Detectives revisit the timeline with his movements overlaid, like tracing paper pressed against an old map. In 2005 he lives 3 blocks away. Works nights. Claims he slept through the evening. No witnesses to contradict him. No reason at the time to doubt him. But the subway card data tells a quieter story now that analysts know what to look for. A swipe at a station he says he never used. Another one that places him closer to the building than his original statement suggested. Not proof, but proximity has a gravity of its own. They talk to people who knew him back then, or thought they did. Former coworkers describe him as helpful, almost eager to please. A neighbor remembers him carrying boxes late at night, always alone. Someone else recalls a habit of watching the street from his window, not in a paranoid way, more like curiosity sharpened to a point. No one remembers him being angry, No one remembers him being kind, either. He exists in the negative space of their memories, defined more by absence than presence. The woman's life is reopened again in parallel, because cold cases demand symmetry. Her emails are read for the 100th time. Her call logs dissected again. A message surfaces that once seemed meaningless. A short exchange about helping someone with paperwork, someone who didn't have anyone else. At the time, it read like generosity. Now it reads like access. Investigators don't know if the someone was him, but the possibility is enough to reframe everything. They walk the route between their old apartments, step by step, timing it, watching sightlines, noting where cameras existed and where they didn't. In 2005, there were more shadows. Fewer lenses. The city was porous in ways it no longer is. You could cross 3 blocks and pass through anonymity like a curtain. It wouldn't take force. Just timing. Just the right words. Interviews with the man grow longer. He agrees to them willingly, almost enthusiastically. He offers coffee. He asks about the process. He corrects detectives on small details they didn't mention. A habit that sets off alarms without triggering anything actionable. He insists he barely knew her. Then later he recalls her laugh. He remembers the color of her jacket. He says these are normal things to remember about a neighbor. They are. And they aren't. Psychologists are consulted, not to diagnose, but to interpret the performance. They talk about control, about the pleasure some people derive from managing perception. They talk about the comfort of masks, about how changing a name can feel like shedding gravity. None of it is admissible. All of it sticks. The case brushes up against the limits of what can be proven. Without a body, every theory floats. Voluntary disappearance. Accidental death. Foul play executed with surgical restraint. Each possibility reshapes the same facts into a different story. Prosecutors circle the case and pull back. The standard is high. The risk is public. A failed trial would bury the truth deeper than silence ever could. Outside the precinct, the world continues to rebrand itself. New York in the mid-2010s is not the New York of 2005. The city has learned to record itself obsessively. Faces are captured, movements logged, lives archived. The irony isn't lost on anyone working the case. If it happened today, it might be solved in hours. Or maybe not. Maybe disappearance simply adapts. A breakthrough threatens to emerge from an unlikely place. A data analyst cross-references missing persons databases with name change records, marriage licenses, death certificates. It's a long shot. It always is. But one entry refuses to be dismissed. A woman in another state, reported deceased under circumstances that never quite added up. The age is close. The physical description similar. Dental records are inconclusive. DNA is requested. The wait stretches. Hope creeps in against protocol. When the results come back negative, the disappointment is sharp enough to feel personal. Another almost. Another door closing. But the process leaves residue. It proves that threads exist beyond the original map. It proves that the truth, whatever it is, doesn't respect jurisdiction. The man with the new identity senses the pressure tightening. He hires a lawyer. Cooperation becomes conditional. Interviews end sooner. Smiles disappear. The performance shifts from open to guarded. Detectives debate strategy late into the night. Push harder and risk spooking him into disappearing again. Wait longer and risk losing momentum. The case balances on timing, just like it did all those years ago. They start watching him legally, quietly. Patterns emerge. He avoids certain neighborhoods. Certain dates make him restless. On the anniversary of the disappearance, he leaves town. No explanation. No reason required. But it's noted. Everything is noted now. The file is no longer dormant. It's awake, alert, waiting. Meanwhile, the woman's family lives in a state that has no name. Not grief. Not hope. Something in between. They are careful with their expectations. They've learned not to trust momentum. Still, when detectives call, they answer immediately. They listen. They ask fewer questions than they used to. They know that answers, if they come, will not be clean. The city offers its own commentary in the background. A construction crew uncovers human remains miles away. For a moment, everyone holds their breath. The remains belong to someone else. Relief and guilt collide. Another name leaves the list. This one stays. Cold case units survive on patience and obsession in equal measure. Detectives dream about details they've never seen. They argue over commas in old reports. They imagine alternative versions of the night, running them like simulations, adjusting variables, testing outcomes. If she trusted him. If she didn't. If the door was left open deliberately. If it was staged. Each version ends the same way. With a gap that refuses to close. What haunts the case isn't violence. It's restraint. The sense that whatever happened was controlled, measured, designed to leave nothing behind. That kind of discipline doesn't come from panic. It comes from practice. And practice, by definition, happens more than once. The investigation edges toward a precipice where belief and proof diverge. Detectives believe they are close. They can feel it in the way the case resists them now, in the way the man's life seems constructed to absorb scrutiny without cracking. But belief doesn't make arrests. Evidence does. And evidence, in this case, remains just out of reach. As another year turns, the file is updated again, thicker than ever. The label on the spine still reads cold case, but the temperature has changed. It's no longer frozen. It's unstable, ready to shift. Somewhere between the woman who vanished and the man who reinvented himself lies a truth that has survived time, technology, and doubt. And the closer investigators get to it, the more they understand that resolution, if it comes at all, will not arrive gently. Pressure changes people, even when it's invisible. Especially when it's invisible. The man with the borrowed life begins to feel it in small, irrational ways. He changes his route to work. He checks mirrors longer than necessary. He asks his lawyer questions that circle the same point without landing on it. Questions about statutes of limitation, about evidence thresholds, about how much silence is too much. Nothing illegal. Nothing actionable. But the rhythm of his life loses its smoothness, and investigators notice. They always do. A break comes not from force, but from error. Not his, at least not directly. A clerk in a county records office flags a discrepancy while digitizing old paperwork. Two identities. Same handwriting. Same emergency contact, listed years apart under different names. It's minor. Administrative. The kind of thing that gets fixed quietly every day. But when it's fed into the system, it lights up like a flare for anyone who knows where to look. Detectives trace the emergency contact. It leads to a woman who remembers him differently depending on which name you use. Under one, he was a friend of a friend, quiet, reliable, helpful with errands. Under the other, he was something closer, something heavier, a presence that arrived quickly and left without explanation. She mentions a night, years ago, when he showed up unannounced, shaken, asking to stay for a few hours. He told her someone was missing, that things were complicated. She assumed it was drama. Everyone did back then. The timeline tightens. The night he stayed with her overlaps with the disappearance. Not perfectly. Close enough to matter. Her memory isn't precise. She doesn't want to be involved. But she remembers the smell on his clothes, like cleaning chemicals, sharp and wrong for the hour. She remembers him washing his hands repeatedly, as if the skin itself had offended him. Investigators don't celebrate. They don't rush. They've been burned by almost before. But they begin to speak more carefully, to document more aggressively. Subpoenas follow. Old purchase records are pulled. A receipt surfaces for supplies bought the day after the disappearance. Ordinary items. Gloves. Plastic sheeting. A storage bin. On their own, they mean nothing. Together, they hum with implication. They search for the storage unit listed under one of his earlier names. It's long gone, auctioned off years ago, contents discarded. Another door closes. But the idea remains. That there were places, temporary and legal, where things could be hidden and then erased without ceremony. The city is full of them. The woman's apartment building undergoes major renovations, and with them comes a chance investigators have been waiting for. Walls are opened. Floors are pulled up. Pipes are replaced. It's invasive, surgical, Expensive. The owner agrees reluctantly, under pressure and with compensation. For days, the building is a skeleton. Detectives walk through dust and exposed beams, holding their breath. Nothing is found. No trace. No mistake. The absence deepens. Public interest flickers back to life when a journalist catches the scent of movement. An article appears, careful but pointed, about a cold case that may not be as cold as advertised. It mentions a suspect living under a new identity without naming him. The community reacts with a mix of hope and suspicion. Tips flood in. Most are noise. A few are strange enough to keep. The man reads the article. He knows it's about him. He doesn't say so, but his lawyer does. They issue a statement denying involvement, emphasizing the lack of evidence, the presumption of innocence. It's airtight. Legally. Emotionally, it feels thin. Detectives sense the narrowing corridor. There are fewer places left to look. They decide to confront him again, this time with intent. The interview room is quiet, neutral, designed to be forgettable. He sits across from them, older now, lines etched by time and restraint. They lay out the timeline, the receipts, the overlapping identities, the emergency contact. They don't accuse. They let the facts breathe. He listens. He nods. He corrects one small detail, almost reflexively, then stops himself. It's enough to change the temperature. For a moment, it seems like he might speak. His hands still. His eyes fix on a point just beyond the table. Silence stretches, heavy and deliberate. Then he exhales and retreats behind counsel. The window closes again. But something has shifted. The performance is no longer effortless. It requires maintenance. That night, detectives review the footage of the interview again and again. They watch his face when certain dates are mentioned. They mark the pauses. They compare them to earlier interviews. Patterns emerge. Not confessions. Not yet. But stress leaves fingerprints of its own. The case begins to leak into other jurisdictions. A detective from another state calls with a question about a man who once lived there under a similar name. A man who left abruptly after a woman he knew disappeared under unclear circumstances. The details don't align cleanly. Different year. Different outcome. But the echo is unmistakable. A pattern doesn't need to be identical to be real. The theory hardens quietly, painfully. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of passion. This was a system. A way of operating that relied on trust, proximity, and the assumption that silence would hold. And for years it did. The woman's family is told only what they need to know. Progress but no promises. They sit with the knowledge carefully, afraid to touch it too hard. They've learned that answers can shatter as easily as they heal. Still, something changes in their posture. They stand a little straighter. They ask about next steps. Next steps are complicated. Without a body, charges are a gamble. Without a confession, they are a risk. Prosecutors weigh the cost of moving too soon against the cost of waiting too long. The man's age is noted. His health. Time is no longer neutral. It's an active variable. Late one evening, a detective notices something that had been dismissed years earlier. A line in an old report. A witness mentioning a vehicle idling outside the building the night of the disappearance. The make was common. The color unremarkable. But the partial plate matches a registration once associated with one of the man's discarded identities. It's thin. It's old. But it's real. The case doesn't explode. It tightens. Like a knot pulled slowly, deliberately, with no room left to slip free. Investigators understand now that resolution, if it comes, will not be dramatic. There will be no chase, no last-minute revelation shouted across a room. It will arrive quietly, through accumulation, through the weight of details that refuse to stay buried. The cold case is no longer cold in the way people expect. It burns low and steady, fueled by patience and memory. And as the walls close in, the question is no longer whether the truth exists, but whether it will emerge intact, or whether time has already stripped it down to something the world may never fully recognize as justice. Momentum is a fragile thing in an investigation like this. Too much of it, and the case collapses under its own ambition. Too little, and it freezes again, preserved but unreachable. Detectives move carefully now, aware that every step leaves a mark, not just on the file, but on the people still living inside its gravity. The man with the layered identities feels it too. Pressure doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to stay. They begin to dismantle his past methodically, identity by identity, year by year, treating each version of him as a separate witness who just happens to share the same bones. In one life, he's a reliable tenant who pays on time and keeps to himself. In another, he's a temporary worker who never stays long enough to be remembered clearly. In another still, he's almost charming, the kind of man people trust with small favors, introductions, keys. Each life ends abruptly but never suspiciously. Just a move. Just a change. Just a quiet exit before questions accumulate. Financial analysts take their turn with the case, translating money into motive, into movement, into opportunity. There's nothing extravagant. No sudden windfalls. No obvious panic spending. But there are gaps. Periods where income doesn't quite match lifestyle, where cash appears without explanation and disappears just as cleanly. It suggests planning, not desperation. Someone who knew how much silence cost, and was willing to pay for it. The woman's digital footprint, once considered sparse, begins to yield new details under modern scrutiny. Deleted files are partially recovered. Old backups reveal drafts of messages never sent. In one, she writes about feeling uneasy, about someone who asks too much but gives very little. The name isn't included. The message ends unfinished, abandoned mid-sentence. Investigators stare at the fragment, wondering what interrupted her, what made her stop typing instead of pressing send. They bring in specialists who deal in behavior rather than evidence. Profilers who don't chase monsters, but patterns. The conclusion is unsettling in its restraint. This wasn't about rage. It wasn't about impulse. It was about control and continuity. About removing obstacles with minimal disturbance. About understanding that the cleanest crimes are the ones that look like nothing happened at all. The man's lawyer pushes back harder now, filing motions, challenging subpoenas, slowing the pace. It's effective. The system responds to friction by pausing. Detectives adapt, shifting focus to areas that don't require his cooperation. They revisit every tip that ever mentioned a vehicle, every report of unusual activity in the weeks following the disappearance. They look for places where time could be bought, and then erased. A former storage facility manager comes forward after seeing a news segment. He doesn't remember faces, but he remembers behavior. A man who insisted on short-term rentals, who paid in cash, who visited late at night. The records are gone. The units repurposed. But the memory sticks, and it aligns with dates that make everyone uncomfortable. Search warrants are requested and denied. Then requested again, narrower, sharper. Each denial is a lesson. Each approval is a risk. Investigators learn to work within inches, not miles. They search properties the man once owned, then sold. Yards are dug up carefully, respectfully, knowing that every hole they make must eventually be filled, one way or another. Nothing definitive is found. The earth gives up only rocks and roots, and the disappointment investigators have learned to carry quietly. Public opinion fractures. Some people are convinced they've found their villain. Others are just as convinced the case is being forced to satisfy a hunger for closure. The man's anonymity erodes. Strangers recognize him now, or think they do. He withdraws further, shrinking his world to routines and legal counsel. The freedom he once curated begins to feel like a cage. Inside the task force, the language changes. They stop saying if and start saying when, but only in private. They talk about endgames, about what justice might look like without certainty. They acknowledge the possibility that the truth may be provable, but not punishable. It's the quiet nightmare of every cold case. Knowing without being able to act. A meeting with the woman's family becomes unavoidable. Detectives explain the shape of the investigation without revealing its sharp edges. They talk about persons of interest, about renewed efforts, about the long road ahead. The family listens with the composure of people who have been here before. They ask one question carefully. Do you believe you know what happened? The room goes quiet. Belief, it turns out, is the most dangerous word in the file. Outside, the city continues its indifference. Construction crews pour concrete over old foundations. Streets are rerouted. Neighborhoods rebrand themselves. Places where evidence might once have existed are transformed beyond recognition. The city is not hiding the truth. It's burying it under progress. Late one night, a junior analyst notices a connection everyone else missed. A shared address between one of the man's early identities and a shell company that owned vehicles registered near the woman's building in 2005. It's thin. It's complex. It's the kind of thing that takes months to untangle. But it's real. And it suggests resources. Infrastructure. A level of preparation that pushes the case into darker territory. The task force expands quietly. Federal agencies are looped in cautiously, aware that jurisdiction is a delicate thing. With them comes access to databases that don't forget as easily. Border crossings. Employment verifications. Alias histories. The man's movements, once fluid, start to look constrained in retrospect, like a maze designed to slow pursuit rather than prevent it. He senses it. He always has. The reinvention that once felt empowering now feels exhausting. Every new name requires maintenance. Every lie requires rehearsal. And somewhere beneath the layers, something brittle begins to form. Investigators don't know if it will crack. They only know that it exists. The case approaches a threshold where evidence and narrative threaten to converge. Not enough yet, but close enough to be dangerous. Detectives feel the weight of years pressing forward, of expectations rising, of a story that refuses to end quietly. They understand now that resolution, if it comes, will not deliver peace. It will deliver clarity, and clarity has a cost. As the 5th year of renewed investigation draws to a close, the cold case sits in a strange new state, neither dormant nor active, neither solved nor stalled. It hums. It waits. And somewhere, in the carefully maintained life of a man who has spent years becoming someone else, the past begins to feel less like something behind him, and more like something gaining ground, step by deliberate step. What finally accelerates the case isn't a confession or a discovery in the ground. It's fatigue. Not the kind that makes people careless, but the kind that thins the distance between who someone pretends to be and who they actually are. Years of vigilance accumulate interest. Every checked mirror, every altered routine, every conversation filtered through legal advice leaves residue. Investigators know this. They've seen it before. Time is the only interrogator that never leaves the room. The man's health begins to fail in small, inconvenient ways. Nothing dramatic. High blood pressure. Sleeplessness. A tremor in his hands that comes and goes. Doctor's appointments enter the record. Prescriptions are filled. Schedules tighten. The freedom of movement he once relied on shrinks, and with it the margin for error. Detectives don't celebrate this. They note it. They understand that vulnerability changes calculus. A warrant finally lands where it matters, narrow enough to survive challenge, broad enough to matter. Digital artifacts. Old devices recovered from storage, from family members who never knew what they were holding. Hard drives thought wiped clean are re-examined with tools that didn't exist when the data was deleted. Most of it is mundane. Photos. Work files. Music. But buried deep, in slack space fragments surface. A document header. A date. A location tag that shouldn't exist. It points back to the block where the woman lived, logged days after she vanished. It isn't a smoking gun. It's a fingerprint on glass. But it's enough to change the conversation with prosecutors. The threshold inches closer. The risk feels more justifiable. Detectives begin to draft a narrative that can survive not just scrutiny, but doubt. They know the defense will argue coincidence, contamination, misinterpretation. They build redundancies. They cross-check everything. Another witness comes forward, prompted by a sense that time is running out. An older man, retired now, who worked nights near the subway entrance in 2005. He remembers a woman who looked frightened but composed, accompanied by a man who kept his hand lightly at her elbow. Not forceful. Guiding. He remembers it because it didn't look like a crime. It looked like familiarity strained too tight. He didn't think to report it then. He's thought about it ever since. Composite sketches are updated, aging algorithms applied, faces reimagined across years. The woman's image circulates again, older now, hypothetical lines added, hair changed. It's a painful exercise. It acknowledges the possibility of survival without confirming it. The man's face circulates too, quietly among agencies. Patterns emerge. Similar sightings. Similar disappearances. None conclusive. All unsettling. The task force meets more often now, tension replacing routine. They argue about strategy, about whether to push or wait. Some believe the man is close to breaking, that one more confrontation might be enough. Others warn that pressure could harden him, lock him down behind counsel permanently. The decision is made to wait, but waiting has teeth. Surveillance tightens. Documentation becomes relentless. The man senses the shift. He stops pretending he doesn't. In a rare moment of candor with a confidant, he says he feels like he's being watched by history itself. The phrase is dismissed as melodrama, but it makes its way into a report. Detectives understand that people sometimes tell the truth sideways. A storm hits the city, literal and symbolic. Flooding exposes infrastructure long buried. In the aftermath, maintenance crews discover an undocumented crawl space beneath a property the man once rented. It's empty. Clean. Too clean. Forensic tests find traces of industrial cleaners, years old, degraded but present. No DNA. No remains. Just the sense that something was meant to be removed completely. The media circles again, this time less restrained. Headlines speculate. Pundits argue. The man's lawyer becomes a fixture on television, calm and precise, repeating the same phrases until they lose meaning. The woman's family retreats from public view, exhausted by the oscillation between hope and intrusion. Detectives shield them as best they can, knowing that protection is temporary. Behind closed doors, prosecutors draft charges that stop short of naming the ultimate act. Obstruction, false statements, identity fraud, lesser offenses designed to open a door that has resisted every other key. It's controversial. It's risky. It's legal. The goal isn't punishment. It's leverage. It's proximity. When the arrest finally comes, it's anticlimactic. No sirens. No cameras. Just handcuffs in a quiet parking lot. The man doesn't resist. He asks one question, carefully phrased, "How long?" No one answers. In the interview room, he looks smaller than he used to, not defeated, but compressed by years of compression. He listens as detectives outline the charges. He nods. He corrects a minor factual error. Then he stops speaking. Days turn into weeks. Motions are filed. Evidence is challenged. The case inches forward on procedural legs, slow and deliberate. Meanwhile, investigators return to the central question with renewed urgency. If he talks, what will he say? And if he doesn't, what remains? A breakthrough comes from an unexpected quarter. A former associate, facing unrelated charges, offers information in exchange for consideration. It's messy, self-serving, but it includes details that haven't been public. A place. A method. A reason that sounds less like motive and more like justification. The story is incomplete. Parts don't align. But enough of it does. Detectives verify what they can. Some details check out. Others don't. They confront the man with the information, watching closely. For the first time, he reacts without calculation. A flicker of something crosses his face. Not fear. Not anger. Recognition. It's brief. It's enough. He asks for a break. He asks for water. He asks if this will ever end. The question hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Detectives don't answer it. They let the silence work. That night, alone in his cell, the man writes. Pages. Then tears them up. Writes again. Stops. The past presses closer, no longer content to be managed through aliases and distance. Investigators know that if a confession comes, it will not be dramatic. It will be transactional. Controlled. A final attempt to shape the narrative. The cold case stands at a hinge point. Years of accumulation balanced on a few decisions yet to be made. Outside, the city keeps moving. unaware that a long-running absence may be on the verge of becoming something else entirely. And somewhere between what can be proven and what can be known, the truth waits, patient as it has always been, for someone to finally decide that silence is no longer the safest option. Silence changes shape once someone is in custody. It's no longer empty. It's strategic. Every pause becomes a decision. Every word not spoken carries as much weight as the ones that might be. The man understands this instinctively. He's lived most of his adult life managing gaps, choosing what not to leave behind. A cell is just another controlled environment, smaller, more honest. Interrogations resume with a different rhythm. No urgency. No raised voices. Detectives talk about process, about timelines, about things that don't matter until suddenly they do. They let him correct them. He always does. It's a reflex, a need to maintain authorship over the story of himself. Each correction is logged. Each detail compared against records. The net tightens invisibly. His lawyer advises restraint. Cooperation only through counsel. Silence as armor. But the armor is heavy now. The charges he's facing aren't symbolic anymore. They carry years. Real years. Time he can no longer afford to treat abstractly. He asks again about deals, about outcomes, about what happens if someone helps without fully confessing. The questions are careful. Hypothetical. They tell investigators more than answers ever could. Meanwhile, the task force fractures into two parallel efforts. One continues to build the case as if he will never speak. The other prepares for the possibility that he might, that something buried for 2 decades could surface all at once. They map locations mentioned by the cooperating associate, places that no longer exist as they once did. Parking lots built over empty lots. Warehouses converted into apartments. Landfills capped and landscaped. The geography of erasure. Search warrants follow. Some come back empty. Others return strange. Soil disturbances inconsistent with construction records. Chemical traces that don't belong. Nothing definitive, but enough to keep going. Enough to justify another day, another request, another careful explanation to a judge who has heard too many almosts. The media's tone shifts again, this time toward inevitability. Commentators talk about long games and patient predators. Others push back, warning against narrative seduction, against mistaking coincidence for design. The public divides along familiar lines. Belief hardens. Doubt sharpens. The truth, wherever it is, doesn't respond to either. Inside the jail, the man's routines become rigid. He eats at the same pace, sleeps at the same hours, reads and rereads the same books. Control narrows to what can be controlled. He requests legal pads regularly, fills them, discards them. Guards notice. Notes are made. Patterns accumulate. A psychologist is brought in, officially to assess competency, unofficially to observe. They talk about neutral things at first. Childhood, work, travel. He speaks easily about movement, about starting over, about the relief of clean slates. When asked what he misses most, he says anonymity, without irony. When asked what he fears, he hesitates. The pause is longer than any before it. He says misunderstanding. The woman's name is not mentioned for several sessions. When it finally is, the room changes. He doesn't react outwardly, but his language shifts. He stops using qualifiers. He speaks more precisely. The psychologist notes the change, not as evidence but as data. The kind that matters later. Prosecutors meet behind closed doors, weighing options that all feel insufficient. Without remains, without a direct confession, the case rests on structure rather than substance. It tells a compelling story. It suggests intent. But suggestion is not proof. They debate whether to offer a deal that trades certainty for leniency, whether justice that comes incomplete is better than justice that never arrives. There are no clean answers. The cooperating associate provides more detail under pressure. Some of it is provably false. Some of it aligns too well to ignore. He describes a conversation years ago, a casual admission framed as a joke, about how easy it is to make a problem disappear if you understand systems. He recalls a location described with familiarity, a place where no one looks because there's nothing to see. The phrase echoes uncomfortably in the room. Investigators return to the man with this information, not as accusation, but as inevitability. They lay out the convergence, the associate, the data, the witnesses, the physical traces that refuse to resolve into nothing. They don't ask him to confess. They ask him what he wants the ending to look like. For the first time, he seems genuinely uncertain. Control has always meant authorship. Now authorship is contested. If he stays silent, the story will be told without him, shaped by others, frozen in a form he can't revise. If he speaks, he risks exposure, but he regains narrative agency. It's the same choice he's been making since 2005, compressed into a single moment. Days pass, then weeks. Court dates approach. Motions are denied, others granted. The case moves forward in increments that feel both glacial and irreversible. The woman's family waits, suspended between preparation and dread. They've learned not to imagine outcomes too vividly. They know that answers, if they come, will arrive damaged by time. One night, the man asks to speak without his lawyer present. The request triggers protocol, forms, waivers, confirmations. Everyone moves carefully, aware that this moment, if mishandled, could unravel everything. When the room is finally ready, he sits down and says nothing for a long time. When he does speak, it isn't a confession. Not yet. It's a story about meeting someone who wanted to help, who believed in second chances, who didn't understand the cost of proximity. He talks about fear masquerading as necessity, about decisions that felt small at the time. He stops frequently, corrects himself, reframes. He's still editing. Detectives listen. They don't interrupt. They know that the first version is never the real one. They note inconsistencies, places where language slips from hypothetical to personal, where someone becomes she, then retreats again. The room fills with the sound of a man negotiating with his own memory. Hours later, he asks to stop. He's exhausted. So are they. No confession has been secured. No location revealed. But something irreversible has happened. The silence has been broken, not shattered, cracked. And cracks propagate. In the days that follow, he revises his story repeatedly, each version closer to the center, each one giving up a little more ground. He still avoids the final admission, still resists the word that would end the dance. But he begins to talk about aftermath, about cleanup, about how easy it is to believe you've succeeded when nothing comes back to contradict you. The cold case teeters on the edge of transformation. It hasn't crossed the line yet. It may never cross it cleanly. But the shape of it has changed. It's no longer defined solely by absence. It's defined by proximity to truth, by a man running out of room to maneuver, by a city that has unknowingly carried a secret forward for years. As the seventh phase of this long unraveling draws to a close, one thing becomes clear to everyone involved. Whatever the final outcome, whatever the courts decide, whatever remains unproven, the disappearance that once felt like a perfect erasure has failed in its most essential goal. It has not been forgotten. And now at last it is beginning to speak back. Once the story starts to surface, it resists being pushed back under. It leaks through language, through posture, through the careful way the man now chooses his words. He's no longer defending a blank space. He's managing a narrative with edges and edges cut. Detectives hear it in the way he talks about time. How the night in question is no longer a void but a corridor with doors he avoids naming. He speaks in sequences now. Before. After. He still refuses the middle. They exploit that. Not aggressively. Precisely. They ask about logistics, about routes, about what a person would need to do to make a problem disappear without attracting attention. He answers in abstract terms almost academically. Systems. Overlaps. Blind spots. It's chilling in its calmness. He's describing a city as an instrument, tuned to absorb mistakes if you play it correctly. A new search focuses on one of the locations he referenced obliquely, a place he described as temporary, forgettable, already half gone even back then. It's an industrial site near the edge of the city, redeveloped twice since 2005, paved over and repurposed. Ground-penetrating radar is brought in, more for diligence than hope. The scans revealed disturbances inconsistent with construction plans. Not definitive, but enough. Excavation begins slowly, under watchful eyes and tighter permits. Layers of asphalt come up like pages being turned backward. The work is careful, almost reverent. Investigators know the cost of false expectation. Hours stretch into days. The radar anomaly resolves into debris, then something else. Fabric degraded but distinct. The work stops. Protocol takes over. Forensic teams move in. No one speaks. What they recover is partial. Time has done what time always does. But it's enough to change the case's center of gravity. Bone fragments. Personal effects that match items listed years ago in the original missing person report. Not all of her. Not certainty in the way people imagine it. But reality. Heavy. Irrefutable. The city exhales and inhales at the same time. The man is informed. He listens without expression. When asked if he wants to revise his statement, he asks for confirmation of what was found. When it's given, he closes his eyes for longer than necessary. The next words he says are quiet, almost administrative. He asks what this changes. The answer is simple. Everything. Prosecutors move quickly now. Charges are amended. The scope expands. The strategy shifts from leverage to resolution. The defense recalibrates, abandoning denial for mitigation. The narrative hardens into something the court can hold. It's still incomplete. It always will be. But it's solid enough to stand. In subsequent interviews, the man speaks more freely, though never fully. He acknowledges proximity, opportunity, decisions that went wrong. He stops short of motive, framing everything as necessity, as inevitability. He describes the aftermath in unsettling detail, not to boast, but to demonstrate competence. Control remains his currency. Even now, the woman's family is told in a private room with neutral walls and no windows. They are given facts, not interpretations. What was found? Where? What it means. Grief arrives late and heavy, tangled with relief and anger and the dull shock of finality. There are no words that fit. Detectives sit with them anyway, because presence is sometimes the only thing left to offer. The media response is immediate and ferocious. Headlines declare resolution, closure, justice. None of the people closest to the case use those words. They know better. What's been found answers one question and multiplies others. But the public needs endpoints, and this is the closest one it's had in nearly 20 years. In court, the man's many identities collapse into one. The judge calls him by his legal name, the only one that matters now. Evidence is presented carefully, methodically. The defense challenges chain of custody, degradation, interpretation. The prosecution counters with pattern, consistency, corroboration. It's not a spectacle. It's a reckoning. The man watches, impassive, as his past is reconstructed by people who never met the versions of himself he abandoned. When asked directly if he killed her, he answers indirectly, speaking about responsibility without ownership, about outcomes without agency. The words land where they land. The record absorbs them. Outside the courtroom, the city moves on, as it always does. Inside, time compresses. Days blur. Testimony accumulates. The jury listens, faces carefully blank, absorbing a story that has been waiting to be told since before some of them were adults. When the verdict comes, it is measured. Guilty on some counts. Not guilty on others. The sentence reflects compromise, the law's imperfect translation of truth. It is long enough to matter. Short enough to disappoint. It will not satisfy everyone. No outcome ever could. As he is led away, the man looks back once, scanning the room as if searching for something misplaced. Control, perhaps. Or acknowledgement. Or the version of himself that believed disappearance was permanent. The cold case is no longer cold in the way it once was. It has a shape now. A weight. A place in the ground and a place in the record. It will be taught, referenced, argued over. It will be cited as proof of patience, of persistence, of the danger of assuming silence means nothing happened. And yet, as the lights dim and the files are finally archived, an unease remains. Because even solved cases cast shadows. Because not every question was answered. Because the city still contains all the places where no one looks, all the systems that can be played, all the ordinary nights that can become something else without warning. New York remembers this one not for how loudly it ended, but for how quietly it began. An open door, a missing woman, a man who thought he could become anyone else, and the long, relentless truth that followed him anyway, patient as concrete, waiting for time to crack. After the verdict, the noise drops out in an unnatural way. Courtrooms empty. Cameras move on. The city absorbs the headline and files it away among 1,000 others. For the people inside the case, the silence is louder than anything that came before. Resolution doesn't arrive like an ending. It arrives like a pause, uncertain and incomplete, leaving space for everything that didn't fit into the record. The man is transferred quietly, processed into a system he once navigated from the outside with clinical understanding. His many names are stripped away, replaced by a number and a routine that no longer bends to his preferences. Control, the thing he curated for decades, is reduced to choices that don't matter. When to eat, when to sleep, when to stand. He adapts quickly. People like him always do. But adaptation is not the same as escape. Appeals begin almost immediately. Language sharpens. Arguments narrow. The defense attacks the edges, the degradation of evidence, the gaps that time carved into certainty. They talk about reasonable doubt as if it's a living thing, capable of resurrection. Prosecutors respond with structure, with convergence, with the weight of accumulation. The legal battle becomes quieter, more technical, less satisfying to watch. That's where the real work happens. Detectives return to their desks with a strange mix of relief and dislocation. For years, the case dictated their calendars, their conversations, their sleep. Now it exists mostly in the past tense. They still get calls. They still answer questions. But the urgency has drained away, leaving behind a hollowed-out space where obsession used to live. Some of them miss it, and the admission makes them uncomfortable. The woman's name is entered into a different category now. No longer missing. No longer a question mark. Memorials replace flyers. Dates replace speculation. Her story is retold with an ending that still feels abrupt, still feels undeserved. Friends gather and speak about her in completed sentences, struggling with the grammar of finality. Closure, they learn, is not a door that closes. It's a room you learn how to stand in. Investigators continue to chase the loose ends, because that's what professionals do. They re-examine the other disappearances that brushed against the man's life without aligning perfectly. Some are resolved independently. Others remain open, stubbornly resistant. The pattern holds, then dissolves. Nothing else rises to the level of proof. The suspicion lingers anyway, uncharged and unchargeable, a shadow the court cannot sentence. In prison interviews, the man becomes reflective in a way that feels rehearsed. He talks about regret without specifying its object. He talks about inevitability as if it absolves intention. When pressed about details he omitted, he deflects with philosophy, with abstractions about memory and fear. He never says her name unless asked. When he does, it's precise, controlled, as if pronunciation itself carries risk. Journalists try for a final narrative, a clean arc from disappearance to justice. They write about patience rewarded, about the triumph of persistence over time. The articles are well-intentioned. They are also incomplete. The people closest to the case recognize what's missing immediately. The truth wasn't uncovered so much as cornered. It didn't reveal itself willingly. It was forced into the open by pressure and decay and the slow erosion of options. Inside the cold case unit, the file is officially closed. A stamp. A signature. An archive number. The act feels ceremonial, almost superstitious. Everyone involved understands that closed does not mean finished. It means dormant. It means settled enough to stop asking for resources. The questions that remain migrate into conversations, into lectures, into quiet warnings given to new detectives about cases that look empty because they were designed that way. Years later, the site where the remains were found is unrecognizable. New buildings stand where the ground was opened. People walk over it without knowing. That's how cities work. They metabolize history. They turn trauma into zoning. The knowledge of what lies beneath doesn't vanish, but it becomes specialized, carried only by those who need to remember. The man ages inside, his world shrinking to institutional time. He follows the appeal process closely, marking dates, noting decisions. Each denial is absorbed without visible reaction. Each procedural loss tightens something behind his eyes. Control, once expansive, is now theoretical. He can shape words on paper. He can request meetings. He can remember. That's all. Occasionally he hints that there's more. Not enough to reopen anything. Just enough to maintain relevance. Detectives debate whether it's manipulation or compulsion. They stop engaging. They've learned that not every truth comes with utility, and not every admission deserves oxygen. The case becomes a reference point. A cautionary example. A reminder that disappearance is not always dramatic, that the most effective crimes borrow the appearance of normal life. Training sessions mention the open door, the clean apartment, the missing middle. Young investigators nod, filing it away as theory, not yet understanding how personal it will feel one day. For the family, time resumes its forward motion in uneven steps. Anniversaries change shape. Grief becomes less sharp, more structural, built into who they are rather than what they feel. They visit a place that finally has a name attached to it. They speak to her as if she can hear. Maybe she can. Maybe that's not the point. The city never announces that it's done with a story. It just stops telling it. But some nights, when the streets quiet down and the ordinary returns to being fragile again, the memory of that open door lingers. A reminder that absence can be engineered. That silence can be intentional. That answers, when they arrive, don't erase the years that came before them. The cold case is cited as solved. On paper it is. In practice, it lives in a more complicated state, somewhere between justice and aftermath. A solved equation with variables that never fully cancel out. A narrative with an ending that still refuses to feel like one. And somewhere deep in the machinery of the city, among the systems that make vanishing possible and discovery difficult, the lesson remains, unspoken but intact. The truth does not need witnesses to exist. It only needs time. And time, eventually, comes for everyone. Time does something strange after a case like this is labeled solved. It doesn't move forward so much as it settles, like dust after demolition, coating everything evenly, making it hard to tell what's new and what's always been there. The appeals grind on in the background, procedural and bloodless, their language stripped of drama. Each filing revisits the same arguments, reframed, reweighted, insisting that certainty should bend under the pressure of doubt. The courts listen. The courts respond. The outcome remains unchanged, but the process itself becomes a second life for the case, quieter and colder than the first. Inside the prison system, the man adjusts with an efficiency that unsettles those who observe him. He becomes predictable. Predictability is safety. He takes on small responsibilities, follows rules precisely, avoids conflict. Guards describe him as compliant, almost invisible. The same word surfaces again and again in reports. Invisible. As if he's still practicing the skill that carried him for so long. When he speaks now, it's with an air of commentary rather than participation. He talks about the case as though it belongs to history, not to him. He critiques the investigation, notes where detectives made assumptions, where evidence leaned too hard on interpretation. Sometimes he praises their persistence. The praise feels calculated, a way of asserting parity, of reminding everyone that the story still has two authors. Outside, the case begins to migrate into culture. Podcasts dissect it. Documentaries reconstruct it with moody lighting and careful narration. Actors reenact moments that no one witnessed. Each retelling sharpens some details and blurs others. The open door becomes symbolic. The many names become mythic. The city is cast as both accomplice and avenger. The woman herself risks becoming secondary, a role defined by absence rather than life. The detectives who carried the case feel this shift acutely. They correct inaccuracies when they can. They refuse interviews when they can't control the frame. They understand the hunger for meaning, for lessons neatly packaged. They also understand how dangerous neatness can be. The truth was never clean. It was assembled from fragments and pressure, and the slow failure of a lie to sustain itself. In training rooms and quiet conversations, the case is used to teach patience, but also restraint. Younger investigators are warned about the seduction of narrative, about the way a compelling story can outrun the evidence that's meant to support it. This case survived because the evidence eventually caught up. Many don't. The difference is not moral. It's circumstantial. The woman's name appears in scholarship funds, in small dedications that resist spectacle. Her family chooses initiatives that emphasize continuity, rather than tragedy. Education. Advocacy. Systems that protect people who help others without realizing the risk. It's their way of pushing back against the idea that her story ends where the violence began. Occasionally new information surfaces, usually secondhand, usually unverifiable. A rumor from inside. A half-confession overheard. A claim that there's another place, another detail left out. Investigators evaluate each one with professional distance. Most go nowhere. A few lead to long drives and shorter conclusions. The man's silence on these matters is consistent. He neither confirms nor denies. Ambiguity remains his last shelter. As years pass, the city that framed the disappearance becomes almost unrecognizable. Neighborhoods shift. Landmarks disappear. Surveillance grows denser than normal. The conditions that made the crime possible are harder to imagine, though not impossible to recreate. Disappearance hasn't been eliminated. It's been refined. The case is cited in policy discussions about missing persons, about identity verification, about the blind spots that still exist between agencies. Some changes are made. Others stall. Systems resist overhaul. They prefer patches. The man exploited that preference expertly. His story becomes a cautionary footnote in reports few people read all the way through. In moments of rare introspection, he acknowledges fatigue. Not guilt. Not remorse in the way people want it. Fatigue. The effort of maintaining coherence across so many versions of himself. The strain of remembering what each name knew. What each life could safely recall. Prison, he implies, simplified things. There is only one version of him now. It's a statement that lands somewhere between honesty and self-pity. The woman's absence, paradoxically, becomes more defined with time. Her life is remembered in sharper detail now than when she vanished. Stories circulate. Habits. Jokes. Preferences. The outline fills in. The gap remains. People who never met her speak her name with familiarity. It's a form of resurrection that doesn't require belief. The legal chapter nears its end not with drama, but with exhaustion. Appeals are denied. Deadlines pass. The sentence settles into permanence. There is no final statement that changes the record. No revelation that reorders the past. The system closes the last door it knows how to close. What remains is residue. In the detectives who still think about the case when they pass certain streets. In the family who measure time differently now. In the city that carries the memory without acknowledging it. The cold case, once a question, has become a warning. It warns that silence can be manufactured. That identity can be treated as disposable. That help, offered without suspicion, can be weaponized by someone who understands how little noise is required to alter a life permanently. It also warns that patience, when paired with memory, can outlast even the most careful erasure. As the years continue to stack, the story sheds urgency but not weight. It settles into the background hum of urban legend and institutional lesson. People will argue forever about what justice should have looked like, about what remains unknown, about whether the ending was sufficient. But on some level, deeper than verdicts and archives, the case has already delivered its final truth. Not in court, not on screen, but in the simple fact that the disappearance failed to do what it was meant to do. It did not vanish. It endured. In the end, the story doesn't conclude with a revelation. It settles. Like a city after rain, everything looks the same, but the ground remembers. The case exists now in a completed tense that still feels provisional, as if one more detail could surface at any moment and tilt the balance again. That's the nature of truths recovered late. They arrive with instructions to handle carefully. The man grows older inside walls that don't care who he used to be. His days are measured by count and light and routine, by the quiet negotiations of survival that don't resemble the negotiations he once mastered. Sometimes he writes. Sometimes he doesn't. When he does, the language is precise, almost bloodless, as if precision could cauterize what remains. He avoids the center. He always has. The center, after all, is where names lose their utility. When asked years later if he has anything to add, anything that might clarify the record, he says clarity is overrated. That people confuse knowing what happened with understanding why. He says the city makes choices for you if you let it. He says everyone disappears a little, every day. The statements are noted. Filed. They change nothing. They are the last refuge of a man who once believed that if nothing could be proven, nothing could touch him. The investigators disperse into other cases, other lives. Some retire. Some move on reluctantly, carrying the habits the case taught them. How to listen for what isn't said, how to distrust clean scenes, how to respect absence without romanticizing it. They don't talk about closure anymore. They talk about outcomes. They talk about limits. They talk about the cost of patience and the cost of not having it. The woman's story, once frozen at the moment she vanished, continues to move in a different way. Her name appears in rooms she never entered. Her influence travels through people she never met. The fear that followed her disappearance dulls with time, replaced by something sturdier, vigilance. People lock doors a little differently now. They question coincidences they once ignored. They understand that normality is not evidence of safety. On anniversaries, the city offers no acknowledgement. It never does. But in small, private ways the memory persists. A candle lit on a windowsill. A pause on a familiar block. A glance at an open doorway that feels suddenly loud. These gestures aren't about the past. They're about the present, about keeping the ordinary from becoming invisible again. The case enters textbooks and training modules, reduced to bullet points and takeaways. Disappearance without violence. Identity as camouflage. Time as both enemy and ally. The lessons are sound. The compression is necessary. But those who were there know what's missing. The weight of waiting, the ache of almosts, the way certainty erodes not all at once, but grain by grain. There are still questions no one can answer. Not because they're hidden, but because they were never recorded. The exact words spoken that night. The precise moment the path narrowed. The thought that crossed a mind when turning back was no longer an option. These details belong to a private archive that will never open. The law accepts this. History less so. And yet, for all the incompleteness, something holds. The system that failed to notice at first learned how to look longer. The silence that was meant to be permanent proved temporary. The disappearance that relied on forgetfulness ran into memory instead, slow and stubborn and unwilling to let go. The city keeps teaching this lesson without naming it. It teaches it in the way it rebuilds over old ground, in the way it catalogs lives and loses them, in the way it reminds you that anonymity is both a shield and a risk. New York doesn't promise safety. It promises continuity. Stories don't end here. They layer. So when people ask what finally solved it, technology, persistence, luck, the honest answer is less satisfying. It was time. Time. And the failure of a carefully constructed nothing to remain empty forever. Time. And the simple fact that lies require maintenance, while truth only requires waiting. The open door is closed now. Not literally. Those hinges were replaced long ago. But symbolically, the threshold has been crossed. The case no longer asks to be found. It asks to be remembered accurately. As a warning. As a record. As proof that even the quietest erasures leave marks. New York, 2005. A cold case that learned how to speak. A man who learned too late that becoming someone else doesn't erase who you were. And a woman whose absence reshaped a city's understanding of how easily the ordinary can fracture. The story ends the way it began, without spectacle. Just a recognition that silence is not the same as nothing, that disappearance is not the same as absence, and that some truths don't announce themselves when they arrive. They wait, patient and intact, until the world finally has no choice but to listen. Even after the files are sealed and the language around the case hardens into past tense, the story refuses to stay still. It drifts. It reappears in places no one planned for. A lecture hall where a professor pauses before a slide and chooses a different word. A precinct locker room where a rookie asks why an open door matters. A late-night conversation where someone admits they still think about how easy it was for everything to look normal. Time, it turns out, does not close cases. It only changes who is responsible for remembering them. Inside the prison, the man marks the passing years with small, deliberate rituals. He stops counting days and starts counting patterns. Which guards rotate, which seasons bring headaches, which nights are quiet enough to think. His appeals are finished now. There is nothing left to file. The finality doesn't arrive with drama. It settles like a weight that no longer shifts. He has become a fixed point in a system designed for people who no longer get to redefine themselves. Sometimes, when he's alone, he rehearses explanations no one will ask for. Versions that sound reasonable. Versions that sound human. Versions that would have worked earlier, if only they'd been offered sooner. He never writes them down anymore. He understands, finally, that authorship has limits. That some stories, once released, can't be edited back into compliance. The woman's name surfaces in quieter places now. In policy meetings about missing persons protocols. In footnotes of research about identity misuse. In the training of social workers who are taught to recognize when generosity becomes exposure. Her life becomes a reference point, not because of how it ended, but because of how it was interrupted. Because it demonstrated how little friction is required to redirect a life permanently. The family adapts to a world that no longer waits with them. They discover that certainty brings its own fatigue. There are fewer calls now, fewer updates, fewer moments where hope spikes unexpectedly. Instead, there is maintenance. Of memory. Of relationships strained by years of not knowing. Of a grief that finally has a shape and therefore edges that can bruise. They learn what many families before them have learned. That justice is not a moment, but a process that keeps asking something of you long after the headlines stop. They answer when they can. When they can't, they rest. That, too, is a form of survival. In the city, the case becomes one more layer in the sediment of stories New York carries without ceremony. Tourists walk past the block where it began. Residents move into buildings that once felt charged with meaning and now feel like shelter. The city doesn't erase its past. It compresses it. It builds over it. It expects you to keep up. Detectives who once lived inside the case find that it follows them anyway. In the way they approach new disappearances. In the way they distrust neat answers. In the way they warn others not to mistake silence for absence. The case didn't just solve something. It recalibrated how they listen. Every so often, a new technology promises to change everything. Better databases. Faster cross-referencing. More comprehensive surveillance. The case is invoked again cautiously, as proof that progress matters. But the veterans always add the same caveat. Technology didn't break this open. People did. Patience did. The refusal to accept that nothing happened just because nothing was obvious. The man grows quieter as the years pass. Not reflective. Not remorseful. Just reduced. His world contracts until it fits inside routines he no longer questions. He becomes what he once exploited. Predictable. When asked by a chaplain if he believes he's paid his debt, he answers that debt implies agreement. He does not elaborate. He never does. The case's final echo arrives not with new evidence, but with a cultural shift. Younger investigators, raised in a world of constant documentation, struggle to imagine how a person could vanish so completely. The case is used to remind them that systems evolve, but human behavior adapts alongside them. That disappearance is not a relic. It's a method. One that changes.